I saw it on Facebook.
Bryan.
If it's what I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's called winning, motherfucker.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I added on there. You know, did you see what I got, Heather? Oh shit! Mute that. Leave that one. All right, we are live on YouTube. We're going to go record to the cloud. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I've heard that too. So I'm glad everybody joined me tonight. We have we got a bunch of interesting shit going on. We got people going berserk in the street. They're rioting in Tulsa on 244 loop. There's a bunch of buffoons on the highway out there raising hell. I was talking with my friend today. She and I were discussing this, and we both kind of come from a background that may not necessarily be conducive to the most understanding of how this works, right? And I noticed that as we continue to talk, our discussion became more and more negative. And it struck me that in the middle of that, these discussions I have are usually joyous affairs, things we enjoy talking about, things we like to talk about. And all of a sudden it took a very negative turn. So here we come out of this pandemic or this plandemic or whatever you want to call it, that bunch of horseshit that locks us all to our room. And then now we've got this organized, planned, riotous affair happening across the nation. Police stations being burned. Who the hell ever heard of that nonsense? See what I'm saying? All of a sudden we get real caught up in that idea, couldn't we? Then what? The intensity of what's going on around us is continually demanding our attention, isn't it? We're being led like sheep. And every time we want to talk about being a wolf and a sovereign man, and then we start discussing about what we're going to do, we're going to get in the right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Are we still as independent as we think we are? Or are we simply falling back on the same old thought patterns that brought us to a crossroads so radical we had to change the spiritual foundation of our lives, just giving it a new coat? We're being suckered into some shit. And every time we get engaged in what's going on, every time we get engaged in the conversation, every time we get fired up and throw an opinion out on social media, every time we decide that our 2 cents worth is really what the world needs to hear, we are neatly categorized and then ignored, labeled and ignored, which causes more frustration, doesn't it? Pisses me off. Don't call me something and ignore me. Who do they think they are? Where do we find an answer to that in the Lord? So the first thing that comes to my mind is Sigurd. Because this is exactly what's going on right now. All of us have been raised to react in a certain manner to what's going on the evening news. Popular interest. Lord Casey wrote in his autobiography when he was the British attaché, I guess, or ambassador to the Americas and to Australia during World War II. He was talking to the president, talking to some of the president's aides. He was trying to lay out the case that Churchill had asked him to lay out. The reply from Roosevelt's staff was that, listen, we're still trying to build popular support for what we're fixing to do. So even far as back as World War II, and I guarantee you it goes even further back than that, the media machine tells us what to think. It creates the interest we need to become what they need us to be. You realize that? See, a king or a queen, they ain't got to worry about that. We're going to war, boys, saddle up. But not so in America or most other democratic nations. You've got to build a body of support. You've got to get general public opinion on your side. There's got to be polling and data to support what's going on. It's very hard to manipulate, but it's easily done. So right now we have two sides of the same coin, both of them throwing a fit in the street, burning shit down. And we're sitting here, all of us are sitting here trying to say, wait a minute, I want to become something better. I want to become something better. I see something that might make me a better man. I see something that might make me a better woman in this lore that I see something that might make me feel more like I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this faith of my ancestors. And as soon as that shit comes up, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else, it's so easy for me to use it to justify an even more radical approach to what they're talking about than they might anticipate. That makes me feel powerful. That makes me full of ego. That makes me feel like I could go down there and make a difference and show what I'm talking about, and show what I'm worth, and show them sons of guns what a pissed off white dude can actually do in the street. And then I'm on the news. Then I'll be on the news. Then I'm going to be slandered. Then I'm going to be labeled. Then I'm going to be ignored. And any good that I might have ever done in this world, any support, guidance, important thing, comment, whatever I've written, will immediately be negated, taken out of the mix, done, your history. That guy was a racist. I don't know why you're listening to him. Do you think they'll listen to the things that any of us are going to say, like they do with David Duke? Do you think they're going to listen to the things that any of us say, like they do with any of these other people that started, that got this kind of movement rolling? Now, I'm not saying be like David Duke by any stretch of the imagination. I see a number of issues with that. We're going to discuss that tonight. So when I go to the Lord, where does it start? What's it look like? How do we fucking fix it? Because we're sitting here, all of us, with a little bit of a desire to be something better than that. And yet, God damn, them old tapes start playing. I want to get right in there with both feet. My responsibility from my position is to kind of put out a message and say, look here, if those jokers over there want to burn themselves to the ground, let them. It is not my concern. I am not here to have overarching compassion for a bunch of fools in the street. That is not my job. My job is for the people right here that come to listen to me talk, that listen to my videos, that read my books, that are looking for something better in this world. I have a responsibility and an obligation of that. And sometimes that might mean saying, you know what, let them have it. Stay out of it. It ain't going to do you any good. It's not going to help you at all. It's not going to get you where you want to go in the world, because it ain't. You'll end up in jail. You'll end up with more fines than you can pay, and you'll be tied to the state for the next 10 years. And nothing you've done will have counted. I don't want to see the people that I know personally that have picked themselves up by the bootstraps, turned their lives around, and started to become something, throw it all away because somebody on TV said something that made one of us mad, and we all jumped on social media and we all bought into it. Oh my gosh, they beat up a white guy. We got to go down there and do something about it. No, we don't either. Let them destroy themselves. Let them burn themselves down. They're going to do it. Let them suffer. It's not my concern. I have no compassion for that. I don't have any skin in that game. Not one tittle, not one jot do I care whether or not they make it through the next week. Let them suffer. That's not my game. Where do I find a justification to make such a radical and bold statement when the majority of people in my shoes are saying, we got to stand up and be counted. We got to fight. We got to show what we're worth. I find it right here in Reagan's instruction to Sigurd. And I'm going to read to you from the Treuerbach, and I'm going to discuss it with you. So Reagan repeats the training he received from his father with Sigurd. Now, there's a whole body of lore behind Reagan's father and his brother and how they were killed and Loki's deceit and all kinds of nonsense. What it is it's a white trash family that's a bunch of greedy jokers that taught each other how to stab each other in the back, and each one looking out for himself. So Reagan gets Sigurd. Sigurd is born of a hero. We are born of heroes. Reagan is the media. Think of it that way. Think of it, Reagan as the media. Think of Reagan as the guy that's in prison for his entire life. You got a 5-year stretch to do. That guy that ain't going to get out. He ain't care if you make it or not. He will tell you whatever he wants, so he gets what he needs. And if you have to stay there a couple of years longer, you did the right thing, man. You got honor. Fucking horse shit. The same concept Reithmeyer attempted to pass on to his grandson. Reagan does so well in this manipulation of Sigurd. One day when he came to Reagan's house, he was gladly welcomed. Reagan said, "Hither the son of Sigmund is come, the hero eager, here to our hall." Already calling him a hero, already blowing sunshine up his ass. His courage is more than an ancient man's. Wouldn't that be a hell of a title? I might get that tattooed on my back. And battle, I hope, from the hardy wolf. He's really blowing some smoke. It's like me walking into Mike's studio and Mike saying, man, you're really natural. You got what it takes. Get in the ring. I mean, that's the same thing that's going on here. Here shall I foster the fearless prince. Now Yngve's hair to us is come, the noblest hero beneath the sun. The threads of his fate all lands in fold. At first glance, it looks really good. And we all kind of feel that way when we come in here and figure things out, don't we? See, one of the very best ways to ingratiate oneself into the good graces of another is by blowing sunshine up their butt. And this is what Reagan is doing. One small note is that he's not Yngve's hair. His potential to be more courageous than an ancient man, a noble hero, and his fate concerning the kingdoms he interacts with has more of a prophetic tone, doesn't it? Why, I probably could achieve all of that shit. That's why, yes, absolutely. That's me. I know it's absolutely who I am. They call it conceited. Primarily because he has not accomplished any of this yet. Sigurd hadn't done a damn thing except show up. But he has the potential. And so Reagan, who does not have the potential to do what needs to be done, starts working on him. Our parents do it to us as children. Society does it to us. Schools do it to us as teenagers. The media does it to us as adults. And it's happening right now in ever more intensifying psychological operations. They're getting more and more and more intense, drawing us into a conflict that is not our own. But a rock on top of a mountain has potential as well. How much does the rock owe to the energy which pushes it? This is the only way the potential will ever be released, by someone pushing it. Does it owe everything that it is to this effort? Must it sacrifice its own integrity as a piece of marble to act like a hunk of granite? That's what we're being asked to do today. This becomes an integral part of the story moving forward. See, we got to remember all that. It is where we find the boy becoming the man and the stoutest acts of courage. It is the development of wisdom to determine the difference between a mentor who will push you into becoming something better and a person dedicated to manipulating you with the flowery words, passionate arguments, carrots on the sticks, and those ideas which most effectively build a victim ego complex. Listen to Louis Farrakhan preach to African-American Muslims. They were really victims, they just didn't know it. They didn't ever have a chance. They were victims of the Jew before, and they didn't even have a chance. I hear the same thing sometimes being said in these kind of halls. You're really a victim, you just don't know it. Oh, how so? I'm being kept down? How would I know? I've been so high all my life that the SWAT team come to my home to take me to jail. How would I know? It's irrelevant. It is absolutely irrelevant. It's the point of wisdom to find the mentor versus the manipulator. And all of us are very familiar with the manipulator. The accurate recognition of this effort from people you trust or love is usually, like most forms of growth, painful. Once we realize that someone we cared about, that we loved, that we trusted, that we let into our inner garth is simply there to manipulate us to their ends and not our best interests, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. There's nothing fun about it. But it's growth. If we are lucky, it will be a slow process of realization when we begin to understand the difference between the two. A time when we might take stock of the facts and extricate ourselves in a timely fashion. It doesn't have to blow up. We can say, hey, you know what? I'm not really with that anymore. I'm going to step away. Be a man about it. Occasionally, you've got to be more of a man about it. You've got to knock them in the head. Now, we didn't get here overnight. Chances are we won't get out of these things overnight either. But now Sigurd was there continually with Reagan, who said to Sigurd that Fafnir lay at Nitaheath and was in the shape of a dragon. He had a fear helm, of which all living creatures were terrified. So that's where it starts right there. So Reagan's going to raise this hero to be more nobler than everybody. The first thing he starts teaching him is, that Fafnir son of a bitch, you might not really need to like him. He might be the one you need to be. Just pay attention. Let me tell you a story. So he's already working on him. See, Reagan can't handle Fafnir of his own accord, but Sigurd can. So he starts working him. Some of y'all are familiar with that, what that means. Every day, all day, mention is made of just how bad Fafnir truly was. Well, that son of a bitch, you couldn't trust him. It's like the Tiger King bitching about Carol Baskins. Same goddamn thing. The idea that Sigurd was going to do this for Reagan was a foregone conclusion as far as Reagan is concerned. He went into it knowing he was going to be able to talk him into it because he was much skilled in wizardry, wasn't he? That was his introduction. He was small, but he was much skilled in wizardry, and people were scared of him because they thought he was a mighty warrior. That was Reagan's introduction in this story. We see that doesn't show up later on. It's a subtle shift in the dynamics of the relationship that begins to occur. Now, this sword is no longer a tool helping Sigurd in his efforts to support Reagan in his quest for vengeance. Now it is a gift from Reagan on what has become Sigurd's quest in Reagan's mind. So he just works him. He works him. He changes him. He goes from being appreciative to you owe me. Man, I really appreciate you. To, dude, I thought you loved me. Don't you owe me this shit? Don't you trust me? That kind of breakover point, and every one of us are familiar with when that happens, especially if you spend any time in the streets. It's subtle to be sure, but this is the same dynamic occurs in relationships every single day, most notably between parents and their children. As the child grows older, and you kind of owe me this. Or the child begins to say, well, you screwed up when I was young, you owe me this. And nobody owe anybody shit. Let's just get that straight right now. But it is also occurring along the sectional boundaries of also true, liberal and conservative, folkish and universalist, tribalist, and so on. People who have been at this a while will routinely beat people over the head asking for a reference or a listing of source material to justify the new person's opinion. Never mind the fact that their silly notions may lead to a wildly unsuccessful path. You know, excuse me just a second, guys. But that's what we're looking for. See, they ask for that listing or source material. If they don't provide it, well, then that's, the point is moot. It's like Jesse Jackson in the debate. The point is moot. Yeah, whatever. What it means is that the guy telling him to think that doesn't feel as important as he did before this other guy figured out, saying, hey, that's not quite right. I believe me, I've had to deal with a bunch of that. People who have been at this a while will routinely beat people over the head. All right, I've already read that. Never mind the fact that their silly notions may lead to a wildly unsuccessful path, or it may result in them actively pursuing the crown of the village idiot. I've seen that too. In either case, one must consider whether or not this person is happy with their life. That's a real big clue about what's going on in the world. If they are not congruent with your path, perhaps it's best to leave them to be. And I did indeed take that word congruent from listening too much of Master Chimp. Everyone still seems to be terrified of what people will think. And see, that's entirely, that has nothing. If you're a confident individual, and I make fun of being conceited and knowing exactly who I am, but I'm not worried about somebody else's opinion of me. There's a life for me to live, and I don't care who it is, really. I will give you 110%. If you want to stand next to me, buddy, I got your back. But the instant you decided that my standing there has a condition that makes you look better, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to have a discussion about it. We're going to clear the air. People are afraid to do that. What if they don't like me? Well, what if I'm alone? Especially in men's relationships with women. The inability to express that and confident in who you are because, well, she might not love me anymore. That she's not making you a man. You make you a man. Everyone still seems to be terrified of what people will think. Do we not realize that after 50 years of also true and every radical idiot making a name for himself that people have, by and large, already made up their minds? People are set in their ways. How far have we got with that? When are we going to have the courage to quit listening to what Reagan told us is also true and begin to express what it needs to be? So it might really be that lifeline that pulls us out of this nonsense we keep finding ourselves in. See, yet we still seem to be convinced that it is reference material which will enable a powerful also true spirituality. To some degree, it will. Where are the men and women of also true who are setting the example of being a worthwhile member of their community? Any elected officials? Only one I know of went to jail for it. This is our challenge. It's not a book report, but an actual successful life. Once a person begins to balk at academic knowledge being the foundation of spirituality, there's usually much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Fortunately, we have an example of what it looks like once we begin to handle our own business. And we got to start figuring out how to handle our own business. When you see that stuff going on in the street and you're reading social media and you're getting wound up like an 8-day clock, ready to go out there and crack skulls, you're not handling your own business. Now you're handling somebody else's business, aren't you? See, once we begin, like men and women of character, we need to be handling our own stuff instead of parroting the opinions of people who never had the gumption to grow into this spirituality. Why would we consider the value of ourselves to be how well we might parrot the talking points of the media and get out there and take action and stand up? I can get fired up about it right now. I can get out there and let's get it on. Come on. I got with a phone call. You know, we can have some people. Let's go. And then we're done. Then we're done. Nothing positive happens from there on out from anybody that's associated with that. No growth, no spirituality, no movement forward, and everything's negated about what you've done. Reagan is teaching Sigarth this right now in this story. Reagan made Sigarth the sword, which was called Graham, a powerful weapon. A sword, or is it the ability to parrot the facts the media gives us? It was so sharp that when he thrust it down into the Rhine and let a strand of wool drift against it with the stream, it cleft the strand asunder as if it were water. And we're always looking for that one killer statistic, that one key point that'll shut down the opposing team. Those people don't care. You can talk all day long. We're not going to change their mind. We can, hey, you can beat them up. They're going to get up and play the victim and you're still going to lose. With this successful test, a new tool is created which will allow a young hero to cleave through any of the obstacles one may encounter upon the river of life. I like that. It's not a turn of phrase. No matter how seemingly minuscule they might be. And minuscule is the absolute truth. There is no detail too minuscule for these social justice warriors to draw to center stage in order to get you to engage in some ridiculous argument. And the dumber it seems to be, the quicker I seem to react to it. It's absolutely asinine, some of the stuff they come up with. And I get suckered into it in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me? Are you literally that dumb? Your parents got these mouth-breathing oxygen thieves talking about this stuff, and you're just, now they're on the highway blocking traffic. Yeah, I can get fired up into it right now. With this sword, Sigarth cleft asunder Reagan's anvil. So that's an important thing right there. And that's the beginning of the change of Sigarth. That's when he begins to figure out, this is a symbolic splitting of the anvil upon which Reagan has attempted to forge Sigarth's personality. Think about that. There has been a constant chiseling away of Sigarth's personality taking place. Everything he learned from his father, whatever he might have known of his father, it's not quite as important. You're with me now. I got you. Let's get this sword put together. Let's figure out how this works. And it'll be an impressive weapon. And you know what? You really are noble. I tell you what, but that 5-year-old, it's like I said, that damn Carol Baskins. This is with this sword, I just read that. Every single day, Reagan has reminded Sigarth of how he had been wronged. Every day, I heard my father bitch about something. And many times during the week, it would be the same damn thing. Wanting me to be just as mad about it as he was. What had once been a simple story had now become a pattern in the forging of the steel we might call Sigarth's drive. A lot of energy and effort has been put into trying to make sure Sigarth thinks the same way as Reagan does. As we all grow up, the exact same thing is happening to us from multiple places, not just mom and dad, school, the church, the society, your friends, TV, MTV, Facebook, YouTube, all of it. And it's so much information overload, it's hard to process. We got to find ourselves. And all of a sudden, we got this faith and spirituality telling us, you got what it takes to stand up. Just pay attention. But we got to turn all that nonsense off. The first account of bravery of Sigarth is not one of combat, which is an important thing to understand, but one where he stands up for who he is, despite the best efforts of lesser men to try and manipulate him. The same thing may be said for women in abusive relationships. For they are most assuredly being manipulated to boost the ego of a lesser man. And I don't care who you are. If I find out you've hit a woman, I think you are a lesser man, period. A spiritually poor man who is usually waiting on some woman to tell him he is man enough. That's a tough one because they don't know. Men bestow masculinity upon other men in the process of growing up. You did good. I did that. You can do it. Do it. You achieved it till you passed a test. You're on your way to becoming a man. And it's a process. It's a lifelong process. There's not a fucking trophy at the end that you're man now. That's not how it works. You're going to work at it until you die. And other men are going to be standing there saying, that's good, man. I can't do that. You did good. You moved up. You beat me. You won. All that kind of stuff is masculinity. Waiting on a woman to tell you you're man enough is ridiculous. The fuck she know about being a man? She knows less about being a man than you know about being a woman. Although in the society we live in, do we not also have to deal with that nonsense too? These dudes that are, Dave Chappelle's right, man, you got to be confident in what you're thinking. Nope, I don't need it, and cut that junk off and become a woman. Good night. But that is part of the process that we are stepping away from. See, never daring to try and prove himself in any kind of arena, he will manipulate, abuse, and beat any woman who gets in his way. Ask all the women you know. I dare you. Ask every woman you know. And I promise you, 98% of them have a fucking story like that. Part of being a man is standing up to it. But I digress. I get fired up about that. Sigurd uses the sword to cut the anvil in half. He steps away from the attempted shaping of his persona. He shattered the myths which were being used to create a future for him, which so much resembled the past Reagan had lived through. And that's what we're trying not to repeat here, folks. We are trying to not repeat the past that brought this society to the edge of chaos that it is in right now. And if we run back out there and jump in the middle of it, so much for all that. Once again, it is the same with us. We have found a tool with which we might shatter the anvil upon which our personalities have been formed. Now we have the opportunity to stand up for ourselves. And it's a scary thing to stand up for yourself. But we don't do this by studying a book report and making sure we have the right source material. We don't do this by finding those old writings which most closely parallel the teachings paraded around by our parents as legitimate. Their pain, their shortcomings, their failures were pounded into us so we might have to deal with the same things and give their life meaning. My dad wanted me to work at McKissick so bad he couldn't stand it. So I would live the exact same life he lived so we could bitch about the exact same things in a factory for 40 years. I'm built a little bit different than that. Only occasionally will we see those few brave souls who have proclaimed, I've had enough of this nonsense, and do something about it. And I was fortunate enough to have one in my life, one who could not, and one who could not. That's an interesting paragraph. I probably should have elaborated on that. My father was the one who could not. My father had juvenile diabetes, and some of my earliest memories are watching him give himself a shot every morning, watching him go into diabetic shock, and my mom giving him orange juice. Some of my earliest memories. Probably the reason I never ended up shooting dope with a needle, because I watched him. We couldn't go camping, a lot of things we couldn't do, and he had to have that job. He had to have that job because he had to have the insurance to pay for that damned insulin. And he resented it, and he hated it, and it got to his heart. And that's how he died. Now, my mom, on the other hand, she did make that decision. By the time I was 16 and I was spinning out of control in the world, she decided, you know what? She wanted a better relationship with the man she's still married to for 39 years now. And she began to work on herself. And she didn't preach nothing. She didn't try to change me. She stood there and let me make my own mistakes. She stood there and let me fall on my damn face, and she kept moving forward. If I had not had those two radical examples in my life, I would have never been able to make the decisions on my own and enact the courage to live the life that I've lived. So yeah, I might elaborate on that. But how do we change this? How do we do this? By taking this faith and smashing that anvil and begin to handle the business of us becoming who we are supposed to become. after Reagan egged the cigarette on to slay Fafner, but he said, so Reagan's breaking his balls. Look here, man, you owe me this. I made you this sword. Now he's made it for him. Not that you learned how to make it yourself. I've made it for you and you owe me. God damn, it goes all through me every time I hear that. You owe me. Well, I did this for you and you owe me. No, ain't nobody owe anybody anything. I don't care how grand the gesture is. Loud will the sons of Hunding laugh. What load did Lamy lay in death if the hero sooner seeks the red rings to find than his father's vengeance? So so whatever else happened at this point right here, he shattered that anvil and Sigurd stands up to Reagan and says, you know what? I got some family business to take care of before I do a damn thing for you. And see, that takes balls. That's when the young man sheds that homespun garment his mother gives him to go out and slay the dragons in the world and makes that decision to start becoming the man. Because that took courage. How many times have we ever found ourselves in that situation saying, you know what? I got some other stuff I'm going to take care of. You go on about your bad self. So he stood his ground despite the guilt trip all of us are familiar with. The depth of his character extends far beyond the weaknesses others have attempted to instill in him with their own shortcomings. And that's what they do. People will instill in you their shortcomings if you let them. And never forget, Reagan is doing all of this because he cannot handle the business of his family affairs, can he? He is still crippled by the teachings of greed from his father and in the grip of fear taught to him by his sister and brother. It all seems to take the appearance of a curse, but these mindsets affect us all. Here we see Sigurd breaking away from that mold and doing what must be done. What we do not see is Sigurd whining, moaning, and complaining about the state of affairs he currently finds himself in, dealing with it like some 90% of our parents who come home from work, having failed at even an average day of work, complaining about some kind of nonsense or a lost sale or having to do somebody else's work or whining about someone in the family, or worst of all, not saying a thing and dejectedly accepting that this is all they could ever expect. The death of our parents' soul, a lot of us got to see it. And here we all are looking through old books or new ones to find a way to be average with a new coat of paint on it. Never daring to read these ancient tales as if they possess any deeper wisdom. Now, somebody might make fun of me. Never raising our heads in any storm of life to see the divine. And that's all we ever had to do. Never once having the courage to completely shatter the anvil upon which we have been forged. Our character, even now, so much resembles Reagan's in our dealings with new people who appear in Austria. Our hero Sigurd does not do this, and neither will we. This effort, just as in the case of our lives, has drawn the attention of the gods. And I've always said when the gods again become involved in the affairs of men, shit starts going south. The heroes don't get born in easy times, folks. I ain't seen not any story I ever read. And just like us, he is given the vehicle necessary to get where he needs to be, and as well as the instruction needed to become successful in his endeavors. For us, it takes the appearance of the Lord. Let me show you what it all looks like. So King Hjalpret gave Sigurd a fleet for the avenging of his father. So he said, I'm going to handle the business. This king says, good boy, here's a fleet. Kings don't give fleets to boys. They give them to men that can handle their business. Even then, as it is today, men who are doing the right thing are generally supported by the people who believe in them. That, my friends, is one of the most magnificent things in the world that I've found on this journey, is finding people around me who support me and believe in me. And I do the same with them, unconditionally. I don't have to agree with everything they say. I don't have to agree with everything they do. But Jordan Peterson, there's a video of him, Dr. Jordan Peterson, he's talking. I mean, the guy's literally in tears. He is broke down, because I promise you, being in front of the crowd like that can be an overwhelming experience. You feel everything. You know when you're losing the crowd. You know when you have the crowd. You can tell when they're on the edge of the seat. You can feel it. And after it's over, it's all of that energy. You feel every bit of it. And he's sitting there and he's moved to tears. He said, people are fucking dying out there for an encouraging word. Somebody to say, you got this. I believe in you. Keep trying. People out there in the world, not here, people out there that haven't found what we found, that haven't discovered what we've discovered, that haven't had the courage to stand up and be what we're supposed to be. They're out there walking around dying, waiting on somebody to say, you got this, buddy. That means something. All of us have the potential to do that for a dozen people in our lives. Imagine what that would look like if we could do it without foisting a bunch of horse shit onto them about who we really need to be hating because of what we saw on Fox News or CNN or some shit we read in prison or something we learned in the Army. What have you done today to inspire others to believe in what you are doing? Have you created a walk-on role for the people in your life, or are you making them the center of attention? If somebody's going to be part of your life, make them the star. Come on in here. The underdog and the hero always have people who love them and cheer for them. But they ran into a great storm and were off a certain headland. A man stood on the mountain and said, who yonder rides on Rayville steeds o'er towering waves and waters wild, the sail horses all with sweat are dripping, nor can the sea steeds the gale withstand. Reagan answered, on the sea trees here are Sigurd and I. The storm wind drives us on to our death. The waves crash down on the forward deck and the roller steed sinks. Who seeks our name? So he's scared shitless. He's already trembling. It's a big old storm. Sigurd ain't said a word. He's standing there. Who's this dude? Reagan's like, we're going to die. As Sigurd sets out to handle the business of his family name, and it matters not which translation you use, we find Sigurd and Reagan in a storm. There are always storms in life. There's always things go on. There's one brewing right now. An obstacle over which they have no control and which is seriously impeding their forward progress. For all the bluff, bravado, and reputation of Reagan, we see him cry out in despair right off the bat. Immediately after he introduces the pair, he begins a lamentation concerning the fear of his life. Many times a man might speak bravely. People will always notice it. They may even buy into the facade, as Sigurd has been conditioned to do. In a moment of weakness against natural disasters or obstacles of overwhelming nature, we might even consider overlooking this failure of a loud person's ego, but it always leaves a footnote. I promise you, people always notice. A mark is mentally made against every man by other men in such situations. No action may ever be taken, but I assure you, that mark is bait. No, scratch that. It is the veritable feast for another man's ego. The instant any man feels like he may not be important enough, his ego will act to make sure that all the appropriate people take note of this, and all in an effort to boost how important they think they are. Well, I saw him do this and he didn't, fuck, give me a break. Polite character assassination at the water cooler or on social media are the usual manifestations of these phenomena, whereby a man might become more than he really is by pointing out the failure of another man in crisis. If you pay close attention, you'll begin to see it everywhere. No action ever needs to be taken. No proof is ever required. And just the hint of a suggestion that they could do better. I could probably do a little bit better than that. How do you, what? But Sigurd does not follow this pattern. He pays attention and begins to learn the literal lessons of success from the divine. This is an important thing to remember. The man spake, like I was when Volson was young, gladdened the ravens and battle gave, call me the man from the mountain now. Fang or Fjolnir, with you will I fare. They sailed to the land, and the man went on board the ship, and the storm subsided. Sigurd spake. You have the courage to invite the divine into your life. You have a way to navigate any kind of storm in life. I don't give a shit which spirituality you look at. You're going to find the same principle. When you invite the divine in your life, when you begin to cultivate the strength of your spirituality, it could be a tornado out there. You got what it takes to make it. It comes from in here. It's about inviting the divine into us and becoming that well-rounded individual. Mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. They all have to work together. If you don't have one of them in your life, it leaves a weakness. And those kind of storms will, just like Reagan, you'll be terrified for your life. They invite the divine onto their board, on the ship, and the storm subsided. That shit's told I don't know how many times. With the invitation of the divine one into the action of handling the family business, the storm subsides. So too it is with us. Whenever we invite the gods into our actions, we gain more than we might know. Odin is not striking his enemy down for him. He's not granting some miracle so that he will not have to face some penalty of law. And it's the same tale told in the Rig Thula. When the divine is invited into our life as a matter of routine, as in ceremony, we find ourselves tapped into wisdom necessary to navigate this realm. Moreover, we find the instructions necessary to do so as a very successful individual. The generational and continual invitation of the divine into the families as outlined in the Rig Thula resulted in the creation of men and women who literally built societies and created kingdoms by their own hand. Odin has already provided the raw material in the form of the shards of Sigurd's sword. Through practice, dedication, and perseverance, Sigurd made those shards into a fine, fine implement. We already know its capabilities. What might our lives become if we were to find out that we might sharpen our minds under that very same divine guidance? We are already in possession of those raw materials from the first visit of Odin, Vili, and Ve. Now we will sharpen them. Dakar said, "For thou seest the fate that to gods and men is given. What sign is fairest for him who fights, and best for the swinging of swords?" Hineker spake, "Many the signs, if a man but knew, that are good for the swinging of swords. It is well, methinks, if the warrior meets a raven black on his road." The question is asked in a straightforward manner. What signs does Sigurd need to be looking for? Odin replies with a raven on the road, a sign of a scavenger of the glorious dead on the battlefield. But Odin suggests there are many signs which are good for the swinging of swords if a man but knew. No one knew how to teach Sigurd this knowledge except the divine. To tap into that instinctive pattern of behavior that allows you to overcome societal teachings and become savage on the battlefield. You don't just walk out there and learn. You don't walk out there and become that. There's a 16-week process where they break your ass down and build you up to be able to do it. And then the training continues after that. Sometimes we need to look beyond just what is in front of our faces. The ravens know that when men gather for war, they get to feast. For thousands of years, old ravens have taught young ravens the patterns of men and their violence. It usually means they get a feast. Ravens are some of the smartest birds around. So much study has been done to determine this fact that little doubt can remain. It is a small reminder of the importance of the language of the birds. And there it comes again. The flows of energy across this planet includes the activities of human every bit as much as it does the migrations of hoofed mammals and the flows of rivers. We need to be cognizant of that fact. Another it is, if thou art come and art ready forth to fare, to behold on the path before thy house 2 fighters greedy of fame. You see, now we're getting down to brass tacks and things we can all understand. If you have spent the time developing yourself in any activity, be it chess, martial arts, racing cars, doing business, writing books, anything, there will always be someone who wants to take a shot at the champ. They will want to see if they have what it takes to take a shot at the title, the challenge good old number 1. They will want a piece of your success. Now imagine if you find 2 of them gunning for you. Why, this means you've really got a reputation. You've spent your time well indeed. On the flip side of that coin, if you find no one, if you look around and see that there was no one to challenge you, it probably means you aren't worth the effort. No one cares. Ooh, that sucks. It means you have not focused with laser-like intensity on becoming anything more than average. Now that you know it, you can fix it. And this is a crucial second rule of success. The first, to become aware of your environment. The raven was used as this example. The understanding of the flows of energy, which way the wind blows, etc., etc. The second rule of success given by Odin is one best espoused by his son Vali. The sole purpose of his existence was the avenging of his brother's death. He did not get distracted by so much as even basic cleanliness until he achieved his goal. Did anyone ever mention that kind of dedication to you in anything other than high school sports? Don't you think that same kind of focus might serve any businessman quite well? Indeed, it does so every day. Every truly successful man in his chosen endeavor is successful because that is what he focuses on, be it a professional athlete, an astronaut, a father, or a husband, or a multimillionaire. With but a subtle shift in some thought processes, the establishment of a goal, a healthy dose of this faith, and this thing we call awesome true, there isn't anything we cannot achieve. But Veli doesn't begin to this focus until the light, as in Balder, is taken from the world. Are we at that point again? It's the same with us. We won't usually develop that focus until we find something we truly want. or someone? Well, now is probably a good time to find it, because all of a sudden there's a faith telling us here we can do it. And at the same moment, we got this faith and spirituality telling us we can do it. We got crowds of jackasses in the street, burning police stations and cars and everything else, threatening to do what? What's the culmination of that action? How will the government react to that? How will your neighbor react to that? Where does that leave you? You think Odin can step onto your boat now and calm the storm? Because that's what it's going to take. Third, it is well if a howling wolf thou hearest under the sun, and fortune comes if thou foe thou seest, ere thee the hero beholds. And ash I know, which is greatest of all trees. If you happen to be someone who finds themselves centered under the axis mundi of the universe, chances are you're in a pretty good place in life, ain't you? The chance resides squarely on whether or not you understand where you are. All of us in a billion different variations are centered on a vertical connection which runs up and down the depths to the misty hell and upwards to the lofty spires of Asgard. And each day we make decisions that travel us up and down this axis mundi. We're doing a little bit better. Man, I really fucked that up. I'm doing a little bit better. Damn, I screwed that up. All right. That's how it works, guys. That's our thought process. We're going up and down with that. But some people get stuck in that. They get stuck and they form great unhealthy knots on the circulatory system of their own tree of life. They will stop their upward momentum by never letting go of something which has happened to them. Their thoughts will drown out the sounds of the surrounding world with an unrelenting cycle of thinking from which they draw their identity. In the same manner in which many heroes around the world learn the language of the birds and begin to comprehend how life literally flows all over this planet, so too will the person who has the presence of mind to understand where he is. This is when we give ourselves the opportunity to hear the primal cry of the wolf, to hear the sounds which struck fear in the heart of men in ancient times and inspires poets of today. It has a moving quality to it. The same can be said for the mating call of the elk, the cry of the mourning dove, the whippoorwill, and the yipping of the coyotes at night. All of it inspires us. Fear can be felt in the scream of a cougar and the grunting of a bear. Every man knows what the season is when he hears these sounds. He understands the changing of the seasons and flows of energy in the world without even being aware of it. At the most basic of levels, it tugs in our innermost senses and pulls us out of ourselves for the briefest of moments. The very power of life itself springs to life in a moment for even the average man. It is in these moments when we once again find that our expectation of phenomena originates from within ourselves, a spiritual remnant of fight or flight. There's a very primal desire to make a connection with the divine. I'm going to stop reading there. That idea right there, that primal desire to make a connection with the divine. We are recreating all of this. We are beginning to reimagine what this might mean in our lives. We are beginning to lay a foundation. Our children might get to enjoy a faith and spirituality we could hardly begin to comprehend. And when we find ourselves slowed down, confused, blocked, distracted, sucked into some rabbit hole, or told what to think, and we can't see that connection to the divine anymore, we can't feel it in here, do you know what we substitute it with? We substitute with righteous indignation. I can become a hell of a lot more righteously indignant about something and be mad instead of sit back, take a look, say, okay, maybe that's not going to do me in the best interest. It's worse when you're young. It gets better as you get older. And that's where we are, guys. That's where we are in this moment right now with all of this shit going on in this world. We either figure out how to continue developing that very primal desire to make a connection with the divine, or we get sucked into that righteous indignation that seems to be burning up our cities. And we can lose every bit of forward progress we've made so far. Choice is yours. I'm not going to think less of you. Everybody has a lesson to learn. Everybody has something to figure out in life. If you got to go out there and do it, brother, you got to go out there and do it. I understand. But be aware of what's really on the line before you do it. And I think that's the one thing we're kind of missing. It's really what we need to be focusing on. Okay, guys, anybody got any questions? Anybody want to chew the fat? Got something to say? I don't want to hear any bitch, moan, complain. Life is good.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, brother.
I knew my man would talk. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, those are wise words. You know, the one thing that we need to understand is you don't go into battle because you don't want to lose your people. You go into battle when you know that the odds are in your favor. You know, so you know, you want to choose it. You don't want to go out there and react to this crap, because once words, you know, fists or bullets are fired, there's no bringing them back.
No, there's not. Absolutely not. I don't want to see us get sucked into some stuff that's going to keep us from. It's happening right now. I see it. I see people getting wound up on it on social media, and I'm like, come on, man, we got to do better than this. There's some few percentage of them that need to go do it. I mean, there's some few percentage that they're just going to do it.
Hey, if you want to go protest it, it's fine and stuff like that, but don't burn a man's business down and don't go mess it up, because, you know, they're people just like us. They probably started from shit and created their life, and now you're going out there and you're tearing this shit up for them. You know, I watched it through the Rodney King thing in Long Beach. My wife was 2 blocks away from the first fire that started, and you know, in Long Beach. So I've been a personal witness of what this can be, and how people will choose what you are because of the color of your skin or whatever like that on a moment's notice, and how it goes from just, you know, what I'll call the norm to, you know, chaos. So don't get sucked into that shit.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember in the spring in South Korea, the students would protest like clockwork. You know, they're all Koreans there, but then the North, they would come through and it would be a war in the streets. A busload of black belt police officers with these batons would get out, and they would just be whipping, and they would be fighting in the streets. I mean, I don't mean just 100 or so, because South Korea is what? It's one of the most densely populated cities in the world, is Seoul. And they would get out there and they just beat the shit out of each other. And there was only one color there. People get sucked into this stuff for a lot of reasons. In a multicultural society like ours, I feel like we're getting played. I feel like we're getting played against each other on a magnificent chessboard. And I don't feel like being a pawn anymore.
You know, I laugh at white privilege because I was born poor as shit and got to where I am. So, you know, I just laugh at it. You know, it doesn't affect me. The best thing I've done is turn the goddamn news off and only listen to the weather lately, you know, and to stick with, you know, what we are about and how can I make a difference, you know, in my life or in people's lives, you know. But first of all, do I have my shit together? You know, so yeah, I'm with you. I think those are solid words today, man. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. All right, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, I was just gonna say the Korean students had come through there and rioted and broke the tomahawk off the Indian statue.
I was there that year. Them
Okay.
bastards. Yeah,
it was amazing.
I got a picture of me. I was a sexy bitch then too. I was looking good, man. I was all of 21 years old in Korea.
I'm not gonna make that claim. Even back
Yeah, that was something else. Fucking TDC. Yeah. You ever think about going back there? Because I have. I think I might. All right, guys. I appreciate everybody's time. I'm going to recording is stopped, and I'm probably turning the YouTube off. It's official.
And thank you, Brian.
Hey, thanks, guys.